The morning the hospital called about my twins' death certificates, I was making breakfast for my husband Colton. Tuesday, October 15th, 7:23 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was watching the kitchen clock, waiting for the eggs to finish cooking. Colton liked them over easy, and after 12 years of marriage, I'd perfected the timing down to the second. "Beth, you're gonna burn the toast," Colton called from the hallway, adjusting his work shirt. His voice carried that gentle, teasing tone he always used when trying to make me smile. He knew mornings were hard for me, especially October mornings. Our twins had died in October 7 years ago. The phone rang just as I flipped the eggs. I almost didn't answer it. Nobody calls that early unless something's wrong, and I'd had enough wrong in my life to last forever. But something made me pick up. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was just habit from running the bakery all those years, always answering by the second ring. "Mrs. Waverly?" The woman's voice was professional but strained, like she was holding something back. "This is Dr. Judith Henrik from Riverside General Hospital. I need to speak with you about your daughter's case from 2017. My hand started shaking. The spatula clattered against the pan. "My daughter's died 7 years ago. Why are you calling me now?" "Mrs. Waverly, there's been a discovery about what happened in that delivery room. Can you come to the hospital today? It's urgent." I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Behind me, I heard Colton's footsteps stop. He knew something was wrong just from the way I stood there, frozen like a deer in headlights. That's what 12 years of marriage gives you, the ability to read your spouse's body language from across a room. "What kind of discovery?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I can't discuss this over the phone, but Mrs. Waverly, you need to know that we've found serious irregularities in the documentation from that night. Please, can you come in this morning?" After I hung up, I stood there staring at the eggs, now burning in the pan. The smoke alarm started beeping, and Colton rushed over to turn off the stove. He pulled the pan away and turned me to face him. His hands, rough from years of working on engines, cupped my face with incredible gentleness. "Beth, what's wrong? Who was that?" "The hospital. They found something about Ruby and Jasmine, about the night they died." His jaw tightened. Colton was 6'2", built like a linebacker, the kind of man other men stepped aside for in hallways. But mention our daughters, and he became as fragile as glass. We both did. Some wounds never heal. They just scab over, and the slightest touch makes them bleed again. "I'll call Jake to cover the shop. We're going together." That's when I remembered what his mother had said that horrible night 7 years ago. Francine Waverly, standing in that hospital corridor while I sobbed over my daughter's bodies, had looked me straight in the eye and said, "You couldn't even carry babies properly, Bethany. My son deserved better than a woman who can't do the one thing women are meant to do." The words had carved themselves into my brain like a tattoo made of acid. Every failed pregnancy test since then, every baby shower I couldn't attend, every time I saw mothers pushing strollers past our shop, those words echoed in my head. You couldn't even carry babies properly. But something about Dr. Henrik's voice made my skin crawl in a different way. She hadn't sounded sympathetic or routine. She'd sounded scared. What could they have possibly discovered that would scare a hospital administrator 7 years after the fact? I looked at Colton, at this good man who'd stayed with me through the darkest period of our lives, who'd held me through countless nights of sobbing, who'd never once blamed me even though I blamed myself every single day. "Colton, what if something bad happened that night? What if it wasn't my fault?" He pulled me against his chest and I breathed in the familiar scent of motor oil and coffee that always clung to his clothes. "It was never your fault, Beth. Never. Whatever they found, we'll face it together." But neither of us could have imagined what they'd actually discovered. Neither of us could have guessed that sometimes the cruelest betrayals come from the people wearing white coats, the people you trust with your life and the lives of your children. 7 years after losing my twins, I'd built a life that looked normal from the outside. Colton and I owned Waverly Auto Repair on Madison Street, right between the old post office and Drummond's hardware store. The shop had been Colton's dream since high school, and when we finally saved enough to buy it 5 years ago, it felt like proof that we could survive anything, even the loss of our daughters. Every morning, I woke up at 5:30 to bake muffins for our customers. Blueberry on Mondays, chocolate chip on Tuesdays, banana nut on Wednesdays. People started coming to our shop not just for oil changes and brake repairs, but for the smell of fresh baking and the coffee I kept brewing all day. Beth's Comfort Corner, old Mr. Drummond called it, settling into the worn leather chair by the window while waiting for his truck's inspection. "Your smile lights up this whole garage," Mr. Drummond would say, adjusting his Korean War veteran cap. "Haven't seen many people who can find sunshine after a storm like you've had." He didn't know that I practiced that smile in the bathroom mirror each morning, forcing the corners of my mouth up until it looked believable. He didn't know that some nights I still woke up thinking I heard babies crying, phantom sounds that sent me stumbling to the room that should have been a nursery, but was now Colton's office. The twins' ultrasound photo lived in my wallet, tucked behind my driver's license. 2. Perfect profiles facing each other, 20 weeks along, their tiny hands almost touching through the membrane that separated them. Ruby and Jasmine, we'd named them the day we found out they were girls. Ruby because she was baby A, positioned lower, and I'd craved nothing but ruby red grapefruit my entire first trimester. Jasmine because she was baby B, and the only thing that helped my morning sickness was jasmine tea. My sister Melody lived in the yellow house next door, the one with the tire swing in the front yard and bicycles always scattered across the driveway. She taught 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary and was raising 3 kids on her own after her husband Derek died in a construction accident 4 years ago. Tommy was 9, Sarah was 7, and little Ben had just turned 5. "Aunt Beth, can you French braid my hair for picture day?" Sarah would ask, climbing into my lap during Sunday dinners. The weight of her small body against mine was both comfort and torture. She was exactly the age Ruby and Jasmine would have been. "You're the strongest person I know," Melody would tell me when she'd find me staring too long at her children. "The way you keep going, the way you love on my kids even though it must hurt, that's real strength, Beth." But strength was just the mask I wore. Inside, I was still that woman who'd delivered 2 daughters at what the doctors claimed was 26 weeks. Too early for their lungs to work, too early for their hearts to keep beating. I was still the woman who'd held their tiny bodies, no bigger than my hand, while they took their last breaths, or what I thought were their last breaths. The auto shop kept us busy enough that most days I could push the grief down to a manageable ache. Colton had 12 employees now, good men who treated me like a sister and would drop everything if we needed help. There was Big Jim, who'd been Colton's best friend since middle school. Marcus, the young apprentice, who reminded us both of the son we might never have. And Raphael, whose wife Maria sometimes helped me with the baking when we had a particularly busy week. "Some days are harder than others," I'd tell Colton when he'd find me reorganizing the supply closet for the 3rd time, trying to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't wander. "But we keep going, right? That's what we do." He'd squeeze my shoulder with those strong, gentle hands that could rebuild an engine or hold me while I cried with equal skill. "We keep going," he'd agree, one day at a time. Neither of us talked about trying again. We'd tried for 2 years after losing the twins, but my body wouldn't cooperate. The doctors said it was stress, that I needed to relax, as if relaxation was possible when your mother-in-law reminded you at every family gathering that you'd failed at the most basic biological function. Francine's words from that night had become the soundtrack to my internal criticism. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. She'd said it with such certainty, such cruel conviction, that even Colton's father, Harold, had told her to stop. But the damage was done. Those words had taken root in my heart like poisonous weeds, growing stronger every time another month passed without a positive pregnancy test. The drive to Riverside General Hospital took 12 minutes. I counted every red light, every turn signal click, every breath Colton took beside me. The building looked exactly the same as it had 7 years ago. 3 stories of red brick and tinted windows that reflected the morning sun like accusations. My stomach churned as we walked through the automatic doors, that familiar antiseptic smell hitting me like a physical blow. Dr. Judith Henrich's office was on the 2nd floor, past the maternity ward. I could hear newborns crying as we walked by, and Colton's hand tightened around mine. The secretary, a young woman with sympathetic eyes, immediately stood when she saw us. "Mrs. Waverly, Dr. Henrik is waiting for you in conference room B, right this way." The conference room wasn't what I expected. Instead of just Dr. Henrik, two men in dark suits sat at the polished table. Files were spread across the surface, and a laptop was open, its screen facing away from us. My pulse quickened. This wasn't a routine follow-up. This was something else entirely. "Mrs. Waverly, Mr. Waverly, please sit down." Dr. Henrik's voice was controlled but tense. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with silver streaking through her black hair. "This is Detective Ramon Pike from the State Criminal Investigation Division and Gregory Ashton from the State Medical Board." Criminal Investigation Division. The words hit me like ice water. Colton's jaw clenched, and I saw his hands ball into fists on his thighs. Detective Pike leaned forward. He had the kind of face that had seen too much, deep lines around brown eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Waverly, I need you to understand that what we're about to share with you is part of an ongoing investigation, but you have the right to know what we've discovered." He slid a folder across the table. "The death certificates for Ruby and Jasmine Waverly list cause of death as severe prematurity complications at 26 weeks gestation. According to the attending physician, Dr. Maxwell Norbert, their lungs were too underdeveloped to sustain life, despite intervention." "I know what they say," I whispered. I was there. "That's just it, Mrs. Waverly. You were sedated immediately after delivery. What you remember and what actually happened might be two different things." Gregory Ashton opened his laptop and turned it toward us. 3 weeks ago, we were investigating Dr. Norbert for insurance fraud at 3 other hospitals. During our investigation, we subpoenaed all hospital records from his time at Riverside General. That included backup audio files from the delivery rooms that were supposedly deleted after 90 days. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Audio files? All delivery rooms have recording devices for liability purposes. The files are supposed to be destroyed after 90 days, unless there's an incident, but there was a technical error in the system. The files were archived instead of deleted. Detective Pike's expression was grave. "We found the recording from your delivery room, Mrs. Waverly. Would you like to hear it?" I couldn't speak. Colton answered for both of us. "Yes." The detective hit play. First came the sounds of medical equipment, beeping monitors, muffled voices. Then I heard my own voice screaming through contractions. Dr. Norbert's voice was clear and authoritative. "Note for the record, October 18th, 2017, 11:43 p.m. Emergency delivery of premature twins at 26 weeks gestation." Then another voice, female, hesitant. "Doctor, the chart says 34 weeks based on last menstrual period and ultrasound dating." "You're mistaken, Nurse Marsh. Documented as I stated, 26 weeks. "But doctor, the ultrasound from 2 weeks ago showed 32 weeks development. That would make them 34 weeks now." His voice turned sharp, threatening. "Nurse Marsh, are you questioning my medical judgment? Document what I told you or find yourself another job." There was silence for a moment, then the sound of surgical instruments. My screaming intensified, and then I heard it. The sound that stopped my heart and restarted it in the same instant. A baby's cry. Strong, loud, healthy. Then another cry, equally strong. "Those are not the cries of 26-week preemies," Dr. Henrik said quietly. "Those are fully developed lung capacities. Those babies were viable, Mrs. Waverly. They should have survived." The recording continued. Dr. Norbert's voice. Administration of sedative to prevent maternal distress. Notes severe underdevelopment of both infants. Resuscitation efforts unsuccessful. But the cries continued in the background for another 43 seconds before they suddenly stopped. I was shaking. Colton had gone completely rigid beside me. "He killed them? He killed our daughters?" Detective Pike's expression was grim. "We believe something happened in that room, yes. But there's more, Mrs. Waverly. Much more." I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and called Melody. "Come to the hospital right now. Bring Mom's recording device from her journalism days." Our mother had been a reporter before she died, and Melody kept all her equipment. "Don't ask questions. Just come." Colton was pacing the conference room like a caged animal, his work boots heavy against the linoleum floor. Detective Pike had given us 5 minutes to process what we'd heard before continuing. 5 minutes to understand that our daughters had been murdered. 5 minutes to reshape 7 years of grief into something else entirely. Rage. When Melody arrived 20 minutes. Later, her face was flushed from running. She took one look at my expression and pulled me into her arms. "Oh, Beth, what is it? What did they tell you?" We played the recording for her. I watched my sister's face transform from confusion to horror to fury. She gripped the table so hard her knuckles went white. Those were healthy babies. I can hear it. Those were strong, healthy babies crying. Detective Pike cleared his throat. "There's more we need to tell you. We've interviewed 3 nurses who were present that night. They were terrified to come forward until now." He pulled out a tablet and showed us a video testimony. A middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes looked directly at the camera. "My name is Pamela Yates. I was the senior nurse in delivery room 3 on October 18, 2017. I assisted in the delivery of the Waverly twins." She paused, visibly composing herself. "Those babies were not 26 weeks. I've delivered hundreds of premature infants in my 30-year career. The Waverly twins were at least 34 weeks, possibly full term. They were pink, crying, moving. Their APGAR scores should have been 8 or 9. The video switched to another nurse, younger, with red hair pulled back in a ponytail. "I'm Rebecca Marsh. I was the nurse who questioned Dr. Norbert about the gestational age. He threatened to have my license revoked if I didn't change the documentation. I had 2 kids at home, a mortgage. I couldn't lose my job, but I've regretted it every day since." She started crying. I held those babies while they were still crying. They gripped my finger. 26-weekers can't do that. Their reflexes aren't developed enough. These babies were perfect. And then Dr. Norbert took them to the warming station, and when he brought them back, they were silent. The third testimony was from Dorothy Sinclair, an older nurse with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. Dr. Norbert had a system. He'd identify vulnerable mothers, usually those with complications or previous losses. He'd create false medical records, declare the babies non-viable, and then something would happen to those infants, always on his shifts, always when he handpicked the staff. Francine arrived while we were watching the testimonies. Colton had called her despite my protests. She walked in wearing her usual pristine outfit, prepared to make some cutting remark, but stopped when she saw our faces. "What's happening?" Colton said to come immediately. We played everything for her. I watched my mother-in-law's face crumble. The woman who'd tormented me for 7 years about my failure as a woman, as a mother, sank into a chair like someone had cut her strings. "Dear God," she whispered. "What did I do? Bethany, what did I say to you? Those babies were murdered and I blamed you. I blamed you for 7 years." It was the first time I'd ever heard Francine Waverly apologize for anything, but I couldn't focus on that. My mind was racing, putting pieces together. "Where's Dr. Norbert now?" I asked Detective Pike. "He's practicing at Lakeside Medical Center in Michigan. He relocated there 2 years after your daughter's deaths." "He's still delivering babies?" My voice rose. "He's still in a delivery room with other people's children?" "Not for much longer," Gregory Ashton interjected. "But we need your help. We need you to testify, all of you. We need to establish a pattern, and your case is the strongest we have because of the audio evidence." I thought of other mothers holding silent babies, other fathers crying in hospital corridors, other grandmothers saying cruel things they could never take back. "What do you need us to do?" "First, we need to conduct a formal interview. Then we'll need you to identify any documentation you have from that time, medical records, bills, correspondence with the hospital. Everything helps build the case." Colton stopped pacing and stood behind my chair, his hands on my shoulders. "We'll do whatever it takes, but I need to know something first. Is he the only one involved, or were there others?" Detective Pike and Gregory Ashton exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. That's what we're trying to determine. But there are indicators that this went higher than just Dr. Norbert. Detective Pike opened another folder, this one marked with red tabs along the edges. "Mrs. Waverly, what I'm about to show you is going to be difficult to process. We discovered this information only yesterday, which is why we called you so urgently." He pulled out a document covered in medical terminology and legal stamps. Dr. Norbert wasn't working alone. The hospital's chief administrator at the time, Vincent Holloway, was running an illegal adoption ring. They were selling healthy newborns to desperate couples who couldn't conceive, telling them the babies were abandoned or from drug-addicted mothers who didn't want them. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table. Selling babies? You mean selling dead babies? No, Mrs. Waverly. Selling living babies. Babies they declared dead to their biological parents. Gregory Ashton pulled up financial records on his laptop. Vincent Holloway and Dr. Norbert split nearly $2 million over 5 years, $50,000 to $100,000 per infant, depending on the health and appearance of the child. They targeted specific mothers, those with previous losses, those without strong family support, those they thought wouldn't question the medical narrative. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Melody grabbed my hand. Even Francine had gone pale as paper. But here's where your case becomes extraordinary, Detective Pike continued. He pulled out another document. After your daughters were declared dead, the hospital ran genetic tests on tissue samples, supposedly for research purposes. You signed a consent form while sedated, though that signature is questionable at best. But when we compared those genetic markers to current medical databases, we found something impossible. He paused, meeting my eyes directly. The DNA from those tissue samples doesn't match you or your husband. The samples came from 2 different infants who actually did die of premature birth complications that week. I don't understand, Colton said, his voice rough. If those weren't our daughter's tissue samples, then where are our daughters? Detective Pike pulled out a photograph. 2 days after your delivery, a couple from Memphis adopted twin girls through the hospital's partner agency, Sterling Family Adoptions. The agency, which we now know was a front operation, told them the babies were abandoned at the emergency room entrance. No parent information. The birth mother was supposedly a teenage drug addict who disappeared. He slid the photograph across the table. It was a recent school photo, 2 7-year-old girls in purple dresses. They had brown eyes like mine, Colton's distinctive dimpled chin, and my mother's nose that I'd inherited. They were holding hands, smiling at the camera with gap-toothed grins. Their names are Violet and Hazel Sterling, Detective Pike said quietly. Their adoptive parents are Theodore and Grace Sterling, both teachers. By all accounts, loving parents who had no idea they were receiving stolen children. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was seeing. Those were my daughters, my Ruby and Jasmine. They were alive. They were 7 years old. They were in 1st grade somewhere in Memphis, probably learning to read, losing baby teeth, having sleepovers. Oh my God, Melody gasped, tears streaming down her face. Beth, look at them. They have your smile. They have Colton's dimples. Francine stood up abruptly, walked to the window, then walked back. Those are my granddaughters. Those are our girls. They're alive. They've been alive this whole time. We ran preliminary DNA comparisons using the blood sample you gave during pregnancy and one from Mr. Waverly's recent hospital visit for his hand injury, Gregory Ashton explained. The probability of paternity and maternity is 99.97%. These are your biological daughters. Colton's hands were shaking on my shoulders. 7 years. They've been alive for 7 years. Someone else has been raising our daughters for 7 years while we've been mourning them. The Sterlings are victims too, Detective Pike emphasized. They paid $80,000 for what they believed was a legal adoption. They've loved and raised these girls. They had no knowledge of the crimes committed. But they're our daughters. The words tore out of me like a primal scream. They stole our daughters and sold them like property. Our babies weren't dead. They were never dead. We've already contacted federal authorities, Detective Pike said. Kidnapping across state lines is FBI jurisdiction. Dr. Norbert was arrested this morning at his home in Michigan. Vincent Holloway was taken into custody an hour ago at his retirement community in Florida. They're both being charged with kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying medical records. What about our daughters? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What happens to Ruby and Jasmine? Detective Pike's expression softened for the first time. The legal process will be complex, But those are your children, Mrs. Waverly, illegally taken from you through fraud and deception. The law is clear on this. The question is how to reunite you in a way that causes the least trauma to the children. The call from Grace Sterling came 3 days after the FBI contacted them. Her voice was broken, barely holding together. Mrs. Waverly, I don't know what to say. We've loved them since they were 2 days old, but they're your daughters. They've always been your daughters. I sat in my kitchen, gripping the phone, tears streaming down my face. You didn't know. You're victims too. You loved them when I couldn't. You were their mother when they needed one. They ask questions sometimes, Grace said. Why their eyes are brown when ours are blue. Why they're so tall when we're both short. Violet, especially. She's always saying she feels like someone's missing, like she should have more family somewhere. Now I understand why. We met at a park in Nashville, neutral territory between Riverside and Memphis. The FBI agent suggested we be introduced as family friends first to ease the transition. I saw them before they saw us. 2 identical girls racing down the slides, their laughter carrying across the playground. Violet was in jeans and a dinosaur shirt. Hazel wore a pink dress with sneakers. They were perfect. They were alive. They were ours. Theodore Sterling approached us first, a tall man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. You must be the Waverlys. I want you to know we'll cooperate completely. Whatever's best for the girls. Grace followed, holding their backpacks. She looked at me, mother to mother, and we both started crying. She hugged me tight, whispering, I'm so sorry for what you went through. We would never have taken them if we'd known. Mommy Grace, why are you crying? Hazel ran over, her little face concerned. She had my exact expression when she was worried, the same little furrow between her eyebrows. Happy tears, sweetheart. These are our friends, Bethany and Colton, and this is Francine, and Melody. Violet studied us with intense brown eyes, Colton's eyes. You look familiar. Do we know you? My heart shattered and rebuilt itself in that instant. We'd like to know you, if that's okay. The transition took 6 months. Family therapy twice a week, weekend visits that grew longer, the girls slowly learning their story in age-appropriate pieces. The day Violet first called me Mommy Beth, while still calling Grace Mommy Grace, I sobbed for an hour in my car. The legal proceedings made national news. Dr. Norbert got 25 years in federal prison. Vincent Holloway got 30. The investigation uncovered 12 other families whose babies had been stolen and sold. Not all the children were found. Some records had been destroyed. Some adoptive families had moved overseas, but 5 families were reunited. The nurses who finally spoke up became witnesses for the prosecution. Pamela Yates told me after the trial, I should have been braver. I should have fought harder. I'll carry that guilt forever. You spoke up when it mattered, I told her. That's what counts. The hospital paid a settlement that ensured none of the affected families would ever struggle financially. But money felt hollow compared to the 7 years we'd lost. 7 birthdays, 7 Christmases, first words, first steps, first days of school, all of it stolen. Francine moved into our guest house to be closer to her granddaughters. The woman who'd once told me I couldn't even carry babies properly now spent every afternoon teaching them to bake, reading them stories, trying to pour 7 years of grandmother love into every moment. Her transformation was complete the day I heard her tell them, Your Mommy Beth is the strongest woman I know. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. The Sterlings remained in our lives. How could they not? They were the only parents the girls had known for 7 years. We worked out a custody arrangement that put the children first. School years with us, summers with the Sterlings, holidays alternating. It wasn't perfect, but love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. We have 4 parents, Violet announced proudly at school. 2 who made us and 2 who raised us. That's more love than most kids get. The Waverly Law passed 18 months later, requiring video recording in all delivery rooms, triple verification for infant death certificates, and mandatory genetic testing for any infant death. No family should ever wonder if their baby's cries were real. Ruby and Jasmine kept their Sterling names for school but learned to answer to both. On their 8th birthday, surrounded by both families, Melody's kids, and the friends they'd made in both cities, Hazel looked up at me and said, Mommy Beth, are you happy now? I pulled both my daughters close, breathing in their strawberry shampoo scent, feeling their hearts beat against mine. Yes, baby. Mommy's happy now. Sometimes the greatest evil comes from those we trust most. Sometimes the deepest wounds become the strongest scars. But sometimes, just sometimes, the universe finds a way to return what was stolen, to heal what was broken, to prove that love is stronger than lies. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below about what you thought, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories that remind us that miracles still happen, even in our darkest moments. Thank you for listening to our story. Hold your babies tight tonight. You never know how precious each moment truly is.